Greetings, Cleveland, and welcome to Creative Focus, the show that illuminates some of Cleveland's most talented and creative artists across the genres of film, dance, music, theater, and visual arts. I'm your host, Cornell Calhoun III, and today I am honored to have as my guest on Creative Focus, the artistic director of Cleveland's Off-Broadway Theatre, the Dobama, Mr. Nathan Motta.
Wow.
Nathan, welcome to Creative Focus, man. Let's chop it up.
What an intro, man. Yeah, it's great to be here.
I'm trying to audition for my next show
Oh,
with Obama.
you got the part, man. You got the part.
Okay, so let's just touch on something for me quickly. Can you give a brief history of the Dobama Theatre?
Yeah, so in the 1950s, there was this movement in New York, this beginnings of the off-Broadway movement. And it was basically kind of a rebellion against commercial theater and trying to do theater that was more provocative, that explored social issues, that you know, the language was different, the relationships were, again, more conflict, more provocative than maybe the commercial theater happening on Broadway. And that started to seep into, you know, the rest of America, into other parts of the country, including, you know, Northeast Ohio. And Don Bianchi, who had graduated from Case Western Reserve University and who was directing all over this area at that time, was really frustrated that many of the theaters that were currently operating at that moment were only interested in stuff that was really going to sell at the box office. And he was interested in pushing the envelope and doing some of this new, more provocative work coming out of New York. And so, as the legend goes, in 1959, he was in a rehearsal and had been talking to someone that ran another theater in the area who, you know, said, "Oh no, we're not going to consider, you know, doing this play that he wanted to direct." And he busted into the rehearsal room and said, "Everybody stop, I'm starting a theater." And so in 1959, he got together with some colleagues and they founded Dobama Theatre, and it's been doing off-Broadway work ever since.
Yeah, that's incredible. So now you are the fifth artistic director?
Yeah.
Oh, fifth. And so where are you from originally?
I grew up in Rockland County, New York, which is like right on the other side of the GW Bridge from New York City.
Okay, and so what was your draw to the theater? What got you?
So I'm going to be real with you because we're friends, right? The truth of the matter was, in 7th grade, I had a crush on a girl, and she did the play. And you know, basketball season are over. I know we're both basketball guys.
Right.
Basketball season ended. I didn't play a spring sport, and this girl I had a little middle school puppy love crush on was doing the show, and so I came out for it. And you know, my dad is a retired minister, and so I kind of grew up singing in the choir and, you know, having to do all that stuff that pastors' kids have to do. And so when I auditioned, you know, I was comfortable on stage, I was tall for my age, and I could carry a tune, and I got cast, and then I got the bug.
Do you recall the first play that you did?
Yeah, it was called Rodgers and Hammerstein's Showstoppers. And so what they did was they did 4 like snippets from popular RNH shows. So I think, so I played Emile de Beck in South Pacific and Captain Von Trapp in Sound of Music. And, you know, they just did like 30-minute, like, you know, favorite songs and a couple of scenes from each of those shows and put them all together. And yeah, that was the start.
So your first initiation was in musical theater, was it?
Yeah, I started in musical theater.
Okay, did you do dramatic theater as well?
Yeah, so when I got into high school, you know, then I was all in, and so I took every theater class we had, all the advanced English classes that we had, and I really got into technical theater as well. I apprenticed. There's a wonderful theater in Nyack, New York called Elmwood Playhouse that I apprenticed with their technical director and scenic designer and carpenters, and you know, did everything. You know, I did lights and did sound and you know, all of that stuff, and really just wanted to absorb everything theater. And ended up my sophomore or junior year being in a play there, Sisters Rosenzweig by Wendy Wasserstein, which is a fantastic play. And yeah, so I was kind of doing it all. The only thing I didn't do in high school really was direct, you know, when it came to the theater. Everything else I didn't do any costumes, I don't recall, but I think everything else I was just trying to absorb and do as much as I could.
So did you have a preference, musical theater or straight drama?
Not really, you know. I mean, I was doing a lot more musicals just because, you know, I think when you're younger, at least, in the area I was in and the high school I was in and that kind of thing, there were kind of more musical opportunities, but no, I loved straight drama too. I mean, I would see, lots of, I remember seeing love letters when I was, 15. I was equally drawn to both, even though there was more music theater kind of around.
So do you think because you had your hand in all types of, the technical part, the acting, that was what made you transition into directing?
100%. Yeah, I mean, I by no means as a professional theater artist now would say, I'm a set designer, lighting designer, anything like that. But just having, worked in that world, knowing how long it takes to change a lamp, or what hang and focus truly entails, or knowing some of the jargon. So when you're communicating with the designer, you're speaking somewhat the same language, even though they're obviously much more advanced and trained than I am, having had some hands-on experience early on, and then tracking that through like my college experience and also the early professional career. That's been a huge help. It also helps in the storytelling. When I'm reading a script, or I'm in rehearsal, or in production meetings, pre-production meetings. You're not just thinking about, stage pictures in terms of actors' bodies on stage or those types of things. You're also thinking about, textures of lights and sets and movement and the technicalities around that, which I think is really helpful in incorporating all the aspects of storytelling when you're, in those processes.
And would you agree, I know I agree that I think being a performer initially helps later on when you direct, because you have an understanding of the performer. The one thing that I detest is a director who wastes my time, And I think a lot of times I've been in plays where the call is 6:30 for rehearsal. I don't get on stage until 8, and I'm like, why am I here at 6:30? Yeah. And so having experienced that, I realize when I'm directing, I'm very careful. I only have actors come at the times that I need them,
Yeah, I mean, you touch on so many great points there. I mean, in terms of, a director's role, really the director, I say this a lot, and on some level I truly mean it, the director's the least important person in the room. When opening night comes, they're the only person that has no responsibilities. The director's main role is to give a unified vision, to kind of give that 5,000-foot, view of what's happening, and most importantly, to support and bring the best out of all the other people involved, designers, actors, etc. And so part of that work is supporting those artists. So taking that extra 30 to 45 minutes after a rehearsal ends to talk with your stage manager, talk with the assistant director, other people in the room, to come up with a solid plan for the next rehearsal based on what you accomplished, doing a lot of pre-production work when you're putting together your rehearsal calendars, so make sure that you're using everybody's time wisely, and that way they do their best work when they're on stage. And like you were saying, in terms of being a performer, when you've acted, you have a better sense of what the actor's going through. You know what it feels like to kind of be in your head. You know what it feels like to kind of feel like you're physically all over the place. You know what it feels like when you have a director talking and talking and talking at you, when the truth of the matter is, the more that the actor can do, the more that you let them act, right, and let them work through it, then it becomes a true collaboration. So one thing that I go to a lot of times that a professor said to me in college was, if you can use 7 words, use 7 words. Right. Right. If you can say, instead of, doing a 2-minute diatribe about like what the scene's about or what you saw or what your feelings are, if you can say, like, wonderful work, let's do it again, stronger, and enter with a little more energy. And just see what that does. You know what I mean? Yeah, and obviously, like, you're going to talk about subtext, you're going to talk about those things like around a table or at moments. But the more you can let the actors discover it for themselves and do it that way, I think that can be very helpful.
I came from obviously the old school. So normally when I first started performing, I performed with directors who told you go right, go left, sit now. Yeah. And so the first time I ran into a director who gave me more leeway was Carolyn Jackson Smith.
Oh, love her.
Yeah, fantastic director. Yeah. And I had problems because I was so used to go to the right, go to the left, sit down, stand up. It took me a while to understand. And then once I started to work with her and other directors who gave you a little bit more, then a little bit more leeway to move and create your own character, then I felt better.
Yeah, so chess piece directing is like my bugaboo, man. It's like if an actor just becomes a piece on stage for the director to move around, like nothing's informed. The actor is putting it on in a rather than discovering something organically or really feeling like what's motivating every movement. One thing that I really like to do in that respect is, because as a director, you certainly have pictures in your mind, that like this moment should happen around the kitchen, or this moment should, be, around the couch and the coffee table, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
But the way I kind of like to go about it is in table work, meaning when we're sitting around as a cast and company and working through the script and discovering beats, right, where there are changes of intention, where somebody enters, or there's a new subject brought up, or the phone rings, things that like change in the scene, change direction of the scene. Once we've done that, when we get on our feet and we start the blocking, rather than, having the actors say, like, do whatever you want, like, I'm not even going to tell you where to enter, or the other opposite of that, where it's like, what you're talking about, like take 3 steps towards the couch and sit down. It's more about what I call fence posts, right? So I'll give them a time and a place to enter. I'll give them a general idea of like, I think this scene happens around here. Maybe you aim for the rocking chair, or something like that.
Right.
Or on or around this line, you're motivated to move downstage or downstage left, but not necessarily anywhere in particular, because it gives them enough structure and enough fence posts that they can kind of like build the fence and make the connections. Yeah, and like I say to a lot of actors too, all I'm giving you is one parameter. There are infinite ways that you can cross down left to the rocking chair. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
You can skip there, you can hop there, you can run there, you can crawl there.
You can swag there.
You can swag there, right? Exactly. You can move on the line, as you're speaking, or you can do it in reaction to somebody else. So there's lots of they have infinite ways that they can make their own choices, and it can be collaborative. But I'm giving them enough structure that they don't feel completely at sea.
What was your biggest challenge when you were named artistic director of the Dobama?
Well, Dobama had the things that Dobama really had going for it was it had a really strong mission. It had a really strong history with a lot of, it had been around at that point for over 50 years. So it had a, long history of support. The challenges, I think, were, it was a very small staff, much smaller than we have now.
Sure.
And again, the strength was their artists that they brought in, like the directors and the actors. They had some really wonderful scripts. Really what I did at the beginning was look at the production processes and try to build larger crews, larger support, just making the production process something that had more people involved so that everybody could do their best work. And then the other thing was once we kind of expanded, we expanded the timeline. So we started announcing our seasons in March and April, budgeting much earlier and making a longer design process, like casting the shows earlier, finding design and directing teams earlier. And that allowed the conversations about what those designs would be to take place over a longer period of time. It gave people more time with the scripts, and I think ended up with like, with a really good product. And then we invested more money in marketing. We looked at the audience experience from the minute an audience member sees a billboard to gets their playbill, to sits in the theater, to goes to the bathroom at intermission and has a drink, to sitting down, and how they talk about the play or interact with the theater after they leave. And so investing in that really had a big impact, because really the two cruxes of, in my mind, of good theater is doing really good theater and then marketing it and letting people know about it in a way that is really dynamic.
You've done an incredible job.
Oh, thanks.
Incredible. What does the term Cleveland's off-Broadway theater really mean?
Yeah.
Because we see it all the time, and some people must wonder. Obviously, it's Broadway, but what does it mean to you?
So, off-Broadway, obviously, technically, is our theaters in New York that produce plays 100 seats, that have theaters 100 seats to 499 seats, and they tend to also be nonprofit. And because of that, they do a lot of the industry's play development. They do a lot of the cutting edge, relevant, provocative new work. And some of that goes on to commercial success on Broadway and around the country, and some of it goes more to regional theaters, academia, and then influences other playwrights. So being from the New York area and coming to the Midwest and going to Playhouse Square for the first time, and you go to these 2,500, 3,500 seat theaters that are ginormous and epic, and you see these amazing touring, productions that come through. And I've had many folks from this, part of the country go to Broadway for the first time after growing up with that and thinking, man, these Broadway theaters are small, because some of them are, 800 to 1,500 seats, you know what I mean? Which you could easily sit in the middle of the State Theater, you know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
But in terms of, trying to connect with our community and our audiences in terms of what Dobama does, because we can't do Hello Dolly, right? The plays that we do are new. They're not gonna have name recognition 99% of the time. So how do we brand Dobama in a way that people can kind of understand what we do and what it is? And so if we think of Playhouse Square as Cleveland's Broadway, based on both what gets produced there and also like the scale and the size of it, then the fact that we are off, right? We're like downtown, uptown, whatever you want to call it, in Cleveland Heights, that and that it's a more intimate experience, and what you're going to see is going to be is going to kind of push the envelope a little bit more, in terms of what's explored, the issues explored, the language, etc. It just seemed like a really solid way to go about it. It's also in our founding documents. When you look at the history of Dobama, they're talking about doing off-Broadway repertoire right from the beginning. So that's really about how it came about. And when I talk to folks who ask, well, what does off-Broadway mean? What I typically say is, everybody's familiar with film and with movies. Right. And I say, well, if you think about like your summer blockbusters being, Broadway, then off-Broadway are like your Cedarly Theater movies, your film festival movies, your foreign films, like those types of things, your independent films. And that's kind of more of what we do in the theater world.
So let's take a look at a fabulous production, 2020, I believe. 2020, was it? Sunset Baby by Dominique Morrissey on the Dobama stage.
The play is about a man who's getting out of jail, who's trying to reconnect with his daughter, and he was a revolutionary from the 1960s and committed a crime connected to that movement. And his daughter resents his absence because her mother died a drug addict.
Ashanti X died with an addiction, and your ass is coming back here to be sentimental. Ain't nothing sentimental about a dead revolution.
Through this process, we see how generational differences arise, how wounds from the past arise, how they deal with these things, and really their struggle to reconnect with one another after this long period of time has really separated them, and how pain and trauma from the movement has separated them.
I remember those days because Kenyon is along the same lines in age as me, and I remember feeling proud of trying to make change in this country. It gave us an identity. It gave us something to be proud of instead of ashamed to be black, which was the generation before us. My parents were like, don't do that. You're drawing attention to yourself.
Dominique wrote them so well, so beautifully. Nina, I really identify with Nina's strength and the way that she carries herself through this past that she really holds on her back every single day.
I learned that there's a lot of similarities between my character and myself and a lot of different black girls out there who have that disconnect between the generations, as Nina does with her father, Kenyatta. I feel like I'm telling my own story along with a lot of black girls' stories with that. I feel as though Nina has taught me that there are barriers up with me because of that generational scarring, and it has a lot to do with what our people went through.
I got a deal to make. You gotta bounce.
We named you after Nina Simone because she was our rebel music. You were supposed to be our revolution. That's what we said.
Wonderful production. Wonderful production. So Dobama has also produced another of Dominique Morrissey's plays also, right?
Yeah, Skeleton Crew.
Skeleton Crew.
Was the second to last show that we produced before the pandemic shut down in January, February of 2020. And it's a remarkable play in a number of ways. It takes place in a kind of like the break room, locker room of an automotive plant in Detroit. Of course, Dominique Morisseau is from Detroit and writes a lot of her plays deal with that part of the country, and Detroit has a lot in common with Cleveland in that Rust Belt idea. And so I felt like it was a really important play for us to produce on a number of ways, and it had a stellar cast, really strong design team, and it was very, very well received.
Yeah, and I want to thank you because you invited me to the City Club, and I had an opportunity to meet with her, and I'm still in contact with her. And if it hadn't been for you, that would have never happened.
You know, she's big time, but she has not forgotten her roots. Like the work that she's done for the theater industry, really calling out like the history of white supremacy and racism in the industry, as well as all that she's done for other playwrights, and obviously her work herself. You know, and she was already big, and I feel like she continues to really blow up. I mean, she wrote the book for Ain't Too Proud, the Temptations musical. She's been doing some stuff in television and film. She has a new play, Confederates, that just opened a couple of months ago. So
you think you might bring that to the Dobama?
I will say this. I can say with a relative certainty that it will be produced in Cleveland one way or another, because it's just such a strong play. And I certainly would be honored if it happened at Dobama. You know, we don't control all of those strings though. So.
Right. I tell you, she's an incredible lady.
She really is.
I spoke with her at the City Club, and then I spoke with her again. She happened to be there the night I saw Paradise Blue at Carroll, and we spoke again. And I'm telling you, about say like maybe 3 weeks, I'm in bed, midnight, my phone pings, I look at it, it's message from Dominique Morrissey. And I'm like, I put the phone down. I'm like, no, why would she be good? No, she reached out to me and just asked me if I had followed up on the information that she had given me. I mean, think about that. I mean, that's incredible, but it speaks to the kind of person she is, just low-key, down to earth, and a simple person.
Totally, and I will say too, one of her close collaborators and friends is Story Ayers, who is going to be directing I'm Back Now at Cleveland Playhouse this spring, I believe. And she's an upcoming director who has done a lot of work with Dominique professionally and directed a lot of her work as well. So yeah, I think there's many, based on her visit, you know, to Cleveland when the Playhouse was doing Pipeline and Carroll was doing Paradise Blue and we were doing Skeleton Crew on the heels of doing Paradise, you know, Baby, Sunset Baby, the season before. I'm feeling lots of connections with Dominique and this community and this theater community, and I think that's really, really important.
Let's talk about my beloved mentor, Dorothy Silver. When did you first meet her? The First Lady of Theater.
Oh my goodness, when did I first meet her? That's a really good question. It should stand out, right? I think I first met her when she was working on 4,000 Miles at Dobama, which was before I was on staff, and really, really strong production. Amy Herzog, wonderful playwright, and yeah, and you know, just seeing her work up close, getting to speak with her a little bit. Again, somebody else who's so down to earth, so gracious, so kind, and yet so talented, you know, obviously. And so, yeah, that was my first time, and it made a big impression. And then kind of over the years, we definitely built a really special, you know, personal and professional relationship, as I know you did as well.
Yeah, right. She was my mentor, along with her late husband, Ruben, who was my professor at Cleveland State. So let's take a look at Dorothy Silver in a clip. Was it a Dobama monologue? What was the nature of that?
Yeah, so we did a American premiere of a play called On the Grill. Bright Karen, who's an Israeli playwright, and it basically deals with the generational kind of like trauma and PTSD of a family living in Israel after, obviously years and years of living in a conflict zone. And that's basically, it's like a barbecue that they have in the backyard.
Okay.
And the matriarch of that family was played by Dorothy Silver, and she did there's a wonderful monologue at the beginning of the piece and a wonderful little speech at the end of the piece that Dorothy delivered. During COVID, since we couldn't do things live, one of the things that we did was we did short films of some of our most memorable kind of monologues and speeches from the stage, and so this is from that.
Okay. On the grill, Dorothy Silver, the First Lady of Cleveland Theater. Let's take a look.
I looked up and blew kisses to Father, Mother, my sisters Fanny and Elsa, and my little brother Jacob. That's it, I said to myself. You are no longer on the run. You are home. You have arrived in the land of Israel. On November 5th, 1947, early in the morning, some good people came on boats and took us to Israel, right under the noses of the British. We got off the boat, and they quickly loaded us on trucks, and there, one handsome man with blue eyes smiled and extended his hand to me. My Amiram, my husband. That's how you got me. That's how I ended up stumbling upon you. 6 months later, we had a country.
Incredible, man. And every time I watch that, I just get, I just get. Let's talk
I think it was her last performance. I think it was her last.
Might have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, might have been. Let's talk about the Dobama's commitment to youth. So you have the talk about the DEEP program.
Yeah, so our education programs are, I think, really unique and certainly are, part of our mission. Part of everything we do is equally important to our main stage work. The Dobama Emerging Artists Program is DEEP, is the acronym, is a summer program that I started in 2010 as an acting conservatory level kind of training program for serious high school and college students. I saw a lot of high school students that didn't have a lot of opportunity for really an introduction to technique-based training, and college students who maybe were getting that in college, but over the summer didn't have access to that sort of thing. And if they were like me, growing up, didn't have a lot of money, I was trying to run a program that would really be accessible to everybody regardless of economic position. So what we tried to model, and what we model with that program, is to have an ensemble of students. It can be anywhere from 8 to 20 is kind of the range. Typically it's somewhere in the middle, 15, 16, that feels like a college classroom, like a college acting ensemble. And they take 2 90-minute classes in the morning around various acting techniques taught by some, kind of masters in the field in this community. And then they get like a lunch break and they come back in the afternoon and they work on a kind of a workshop based production, and that's been expanded, just recently in the past couple of years to include early career designers and stage managers.
Wow.
Who also will get a chance to do that workshop production, do some of their own work, get a credit on their resume, work in a professional theater environment to some extent, and be mentored by other professionals in the area. So that's really important. But kind of the oldest education program we have is our Young Playwrights program.
Right. Yeah.
And
I've been a judge. I've been a judge several times.
I was going to say, I know
Right,
you've
yeah.
been part of that.
Right.
Yeah. And that's just a fascinating program. Don Bianchi, the founder of Dobama, his wife passed away from cancer, and she had a long history of teaching in the public schools. And kind of to honor her, they started the Marilyn Bianchi Kids Playwriting Festival, where kids would send in plays, and winners would be chosen. They'd be judged, and then there would be a performance that was like fully produced by Dobama of 10 to 12 of these children's plays. And we're going into our 45th year of that.
Wow.
It's the oldest one in the country of its type of a kids playwriting festival.
Yeah, that's incredible.
But the great thing about it is we've expanded that now is the capstone to in-school residencies and workshops that happen all year long, where teaching artists, playwrights go into the schools, go into public schools free of charge, to do residencies where they play theater games, work through scripts depending on their ability in writing, and it's really been. We have over 100 workshops planned for the coming year.
And you're also committed to local playwrights, the Playwrights Gym, which I was a member of 8 years. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the Playwrights Gym is a little bit what it sounds like. When you go to the gym, it's not necessarily where you're gonna, play in competition.
Exactly.
It's a place where you're gonna work out, and you're gonna stretch, and you're gonna, kind of cut your teeth and train. And that's what the Playwrights Gym is. It's a writers group where a group of local playwrights, professional playwrights, can support each other, share their work with each other. Sometimes it's 6 or 7 pages from something and get some feedback. Sometimes it's them discussing work that they've seen in town and giving reactions to that. Sometimes it's logistical, like talking about the Dramatists Guild or various things going on in the industry. And then obviously we support those playwrights also with development. So it might be a closed reading, it might be a public reading of a new play that we help fund, opening the space, directors, actors, those sorts of things. And many things that have been developed in the Playwrights Gym have gone on to have full productions elsewhere.
And let's get to the good stuff. So you have a very exciting season coming up, right?
Yeah.
So let's take a look at the Dobama upcoming season. Okay, I can't wait. Does the season have a overall theme for this year?
Yeah, so the theme is always is kind of loose, because the important thing I think in putting together a good season is that the plays are very different. They're different in scope and size and in genre and in kind of the issues that that we're kind of examining or the questions we're asking. But the kind of thing that ties it together this year that we're using for marketing purposes is places. And you think about with an actor, a stage manager calls places. It means everyone's, it's time to get to your spot, right? Everything's getting ready to begin. And that's a little bit what this season feels like. It feels for the audiences too. It's our first, full season coming out of COVID, where we knew this was all going to happen, quote unquote normally. We're still in COVID world, so nothing's normal, but some kind of normality. And so it's kind of calling the community to like places, it's a full season back. Everybody get ready, get your tickets, make your plans, read about the shows and get ready to go. And that ties into the shows that we're doing. The first show that is called The Thin Place and is kind of a very immersive kind of seance that happens in the theater. Okay. Then we're doing the world premiere musical, The Land of Oz. And obviously it's based on the second book that comes after The Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum.
Are you directing that?
I'm directing that and wrote the music. And then George Brant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and George Brant.
I'm finding out all kinds of stuff about you,
there you go,
sir.
man. Yes, I got a music background. But George Brant, obviously an amazing playwright based in Cleveland here, wrote the book and lyrics. And so Oz is certainly a place that we connect to. Stew, which is an amazing play, was a Pulitzer Prize finalist last year.
Two of my actors in there, Logan Dior Williams and Christina Johnson.
Yeah, it's a really incredible cast. And that all takes place in like a family kitchen. And you think about like, wow, when you think about a place, that is very personal.
Right.
That family kitchen, you know what I mean? It's just so. And then we do a play called The Other Place. So you have place in the title. And that basically is about a woman who is a neuroscientist who starts to question her own mind. And so she's kind of an unreliable narrator, and it ends up with this vacation home that holds lots of mysteries, we'll put it that way. Okay. And that vacation home is The Other Place. And then finally, the last show of the season is a world premiere play by a very talented playwright, B.J. Tyndall, who's an Oberlin grad, called What We Look Like. And it's about a black family that moves to a predominantly white suburb, and they send their youngest son to school there, and he's asked to draw a family portrait, and he draws a white family on the picture. And it is a comedy that is also, it's while being very, very funny, is also very poignant and really beautiful. It really is about like, family and love and that kind of thing. But it starts out with the parents talking to a psychiatrist about the fact that their kid drew this photo.
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So what's next for the Dobama? What would you like to see happen? I mean, you've taken it to, so many levels from when I first started in the gym. An incredible job you've done. What would you like to see next?
What it really is about for me is not necessarily doing more, but just doing what we've been doing better. If the more students we can serve in our Young Playwrights program, the more opportunity we can give to emerging artists. And then, above all, the more that we can support both in terms of work and in terms of pay, the artists and designers, in this community that are as good as anywhere, if we can really, be a flagship in terms of, artist compensation, in terms of artist process, in terms of people being able to do their best work because they're working in an environment that really is truly supportive, and when all they're asked to do is what they do. That they can come to the theater and be an actor and feel supported in that in every way, as a person, as a professional, etc. That's really what it's about. And if there was, if there was anything else that we really need to do, it's about getting that word out. That's why I appreciate this opportunity is one thing about being a more intimate space is we don't have a big marquee in the middle of Cleveland to say this is where Dobama is,
Right, exactly.
and not everybody's familiar with kind of off-Broadway work in general, but I say to folks all the time, when you look at what's happening in television, for all the people that love Breaking Bad and the people that love, this prestige TV that tends to be a little bit more provocative, it's like, this is theater for you. It's like your next date night, you should come down and see something at Dobama, because I think it's something that people, that will challenge them, certainly, maybe less than a song and dance show in some ways, but it also, it can be a very, very enjoyable and fulfilling experience.
Certainly. Well spoken, sir. Thank you for being on the show.
Hey, thank you, man. It's great to be with you.
I'd like to thank my special guest, Mr. Nathan Motta, for hanging out with us today on Creative Focus. So that's it, Cleveland, we're out. But remember, a true artist is not only inspired, but inspires others. I'm Cornell Calhoun III for TV20 and Creative Focus. Until the next time becomes our time, be well, be safe.